Once a year, the Empire holds the largest masquerade festival. On this day, everyone goes out and enjoys the holiday. The girl opens her eyes, grabs her buzzing head, and tries to figure out where she is. The girl turns her head and sees a man sleeping on the bed next to her. The young lady looks under the blanket and is horrified to see that she is completely naked. The girl covers her mouth with her hand and decides that she needs to calm down and try to remember what happened yesterday. The night before, a large company gathered in one of the bars to have fun with everyone at the masquerade. One of the guys notices that their youngest doesn't drink at all. The girl replies that there is an unusual atmosphere around. A fairly drunk blonde says that people who expressed loyalty to the previous emperor went with him to the afterlife. The guy's colleague gives him a powerful slap on the head and suggests it's better to drink than talk. The guys start fooling around and discuss that the current emperor judges only by skills, which is why they, commoners, were able to become knights. Tired of empty chatter, the girl gets up and is about to leave the company. Pressed against the door, Miss thinks whether it was in vain that she left and maybe it's worth returning. The girl looks towards the walking street and decides that she deserves to have fun after a long time of service. Having cast aside all fears and doubts, Miss has fun, enjoys life, and dances carefree. Suddenly, in the crowd, the girl notices a strange young man hiding under a cloak. After thinking a little, the girl runs up, grabs the young man by the hand, and drags him into the crowd, saying that it's a festival. The couple dances carefree all evening, no longer noticing what is happening around them. The girl stares into the man's eyes and, intoxicated by alcohol and the holiday, realizes that she is missing. The girl clutches her head in horror and doesn't understand how she could sleep with a guy just by looking into his eyes. The lady decides to quietly get up and leave before the strange guy wakes up. Collecting the clothes scattered on the floor, Miss thinks that everything will still be okay if she manages to escape. After getting dressed, the girl cannot contain her curiosity and approaches the guy to examine him. The man looks completely inconspicuous, although in the evening the girl thought he was handsome. Suddenly, the girl jumps back in amazement, recognizing the strange, rich decoration on the man's neck. Miss, not believing her eyes, realizes that the one in front is nothing more than amalate. This item makes it difficult to recognize the owner's face. The lady heard that it was made by a magician who is now impossible to find. With horror, the girl realizes that this treasure is in the possession of the only remaining member of the ruling family, the current Emperor Kaiyai. Having killed all his relatives, the emperor ascended the throne, and a few years later began a cold-blooded conquest. The girl falls into complete despair, realizing that a chance meeting could end very badly. The emperor hates people who cling to him, even those who cry out for love overnight. Keiya always said that he does not need those who lie to him, but he does not tolerate flattery even more. The girl understands that if the rumors are true, then she can say goodbye to life. The lady quietly retreats to the door and realizes that she must run. This is her only chance of salvation. The girl, confused about the road, runs as fast as she can, hoping that the emperor's guards are not pursuing her. Finally, Miss falls to her knees, realizing that she simply does not have the strength to run any further. The young woman pulls off her wig and hopes that the emperor will not look for a random stranger with whom he spent one night. There are rustling noises in the carefully cleaned room. Someone is getting ready for work. Looking at himself in the mirror, the knight makes sure that his uniform fits perfectly. Satisfied with her reflection, the girl decisively leaves the room. It's time to get to work. In the palace corridor, the commander catches up with Ilan and asks if she returned from the masquerade without any problems. The guy notices that he regrets that the girl left too early yesterday. Islan replies that, on the contrary, she is not at all sorry, and it would have been better not to go anywhere at all. The young man continues to pester the girl, but is suddenly interrupted by an authoritative voice. General Leonard himself, the head of the Crescent family, an outstanding personality and commander of the Knights, appears before the young people. The guy rushes to the general asking where he disappeared so suddenly yesterday. Leonard replies that protecting the emperor comes first for him, so he shouldn't have too much fun. Ilan, looking at the general, thinks that there are rumors that he has a pedigree from a distant royal family. The general looks around and orders the girl to follow him. Walking along the corridor, Ilan thinks that due to his duty, he spends almost all his time with the general. which is why he is constantly nervous. But now the girl is nervous just from the thought of whether the emperor will recognize her or not. The knight hopes that it will be impossible to recognize her because she wore bright makeup and a wig for the masquerade. The emperor is finishing his morning toilet as young people enter the office. Kaya turns to the knights and says that they have finally arrived. Elin tries not to look at the ruler, but sweat flows from her out of fear. Suddenly, the details of the past night pop up in the girl's head, and her heart is ready to jump out of her chest. The emperor asks Leonard if he was able to enjoy yesterday's festival. The knights are puzzled by the question, because the emperor had never asked anything like this before. The general sheepishly replies that thanks to the master, everyone was able to have a great time. Suddenly, Kaya turns to Ilan and asks her the same question. The girl resolutely says that she was not at the festival, so she cannot say anything about this. The emperor takes the cup and asks what the knights think about the continuation of the festive night. Noticing the puzzled look of his subjects, the man asks what they thought about when a man and a woman slept together, barely meeting their eyes. Elin's heart sinks when she realizes that the ruler is talking about their last night. General Leonard, confused, says that if people like each other, then that's normal. Kaya looks intently at Ilan, expecting an answer from her as well. After thinking for a minute, the girl says that true love comes from the depths of the heart. The emperor clearly does not understand what the girl means, and, in bewilderment, awaits the continuation. In order to ward off any suspicion as much as possible, Ilan says that personally, all she needs to do before the wedding is hold hands. The emperor smiles thoughtfully and says that the girl has a very interesting point of view. Kaya sits down in a chair and tells the young people that they can go. Leaving the master's office, Leonard notices that today the girl is different from her former self. Elin replies that the emperor's questions confused her, and she did not really understand what he meant. A month after the events, Elin begins to think that something incomprehensible is happening. Her cycle has somehow gone wrong. The girl thinks that she has heard more than once that menstruation can be disrupted due to constant stress, and there has been plenty of it in her life lately. Every time the girl encounters the emperor, memories come up and her heart goes crazy. In addition, the girl has recently been very worried about the actions of the overlord's knights. The girl tries not to worry, but the emperor's company does not help this, and the girl decides that she needs to see a doctor. Putting on a dark cloak, the girl looks in the mirror and thinks that in this form, she would look natural in a hospital in a back street. Elin sits down in irritation and thinks that she is an imperial knight and can calmly go to the hospital for an examination. The girl immediately thinks that the visit to the hospital will immediately become known in the palace and building. Elin is completely confused and decides that it is best to take the safe route. The young woman carefully looks out the door and makes sure that there is no one in the way. Having wandered through the alleys, the knight finally finds a hospital and resolutely goes inside. The doctor examines the girl, says that he sees her for the first time, and asks for what reason she turned to him. Elin feels awkward and stupidly mutters that he wants to know about the state of his body. The doctor gently points the girl to the couch and says that he needs to conduct an examination. Elin sits down and the doctor begins to ask standard questions, writing down the answers on the card. The girl reports that in addition to the delay in her cycle, it also seems to her that she can barely distinguish sensations. The doctor looks at the girl and asks when was the last time she had a relationship with the opposite sex. Elin doesn't like the doctor's question. He's somehow worried about everything that's happening, but still answers the question honestly. The doctor says that everything is clear to him, but it is still necessary to carry out an examination. Suddenly, the girl, not expecting anything bad, hears that she is pregnant. The girl puts her hand to her stomach in amazement, and the doctor says that she should not overexert herself and worry too much, because this could harm the baby. The doctor says that he wrote for the girl what she needs to pay attention to during pregnancy. Elin can't come to her senses. She can't wrap her head around the fact that she's really pregnant. The knight understands that if they find out about this, it will be bad. He wonders whether she should silence the lecturer. The doctor approaches the girl and says that she need not worry because he does not distribute information about patients. If Elin does not trust him, then he can offer a magical contract that was drawn up in ancient times. The girl notices that such a contract is very expensive and asks how much she will have to pay. The man smiles and says that he is an honest doctor, so he will only accept payment for the appointment. At night, Ilan cannot sleep and tries to figure out what to do next. The girl understands that with a child in her arms, she will not be able to return to her old life. On the other hand, the knight knows that she will never be the one who abandoned her child. The girl herself was abandoned by her parents and was brutally raised in an orphanage. Elin thinks hopefully that the doctor might have made a mistake, and she decides to wait a while. After a few weeks, signs of pregnancy began to appear very noticeably. Not only is it difficult for the girl to eat in the morning, even the smell of vegetable soup makes her sick. Having met the general in the corridor, the knights head to their core. Leonard looks at the girl worriedly and asks if she is sick. Elin tries to blame her illness on the weather and assures her boss that she is fine. The general notices that the girl has been looking very tired lately. Suddenly, the man invites Ilan to visit their family doctor. Frightened, the girl says that there is a very good hospital near her house, and besides, her illness does not prevent her from working. The general is embarrassed and says that this is not what he meant at all. Leonard changes the subject and says there is a meeting scheduled for this morning. Elin is surprised because another day was previously appointed, but the general only says that this is an order from above. The girl thinks that this is an order from the emperor, but does not understand why such sudden changes. The knight thinks that he looks rather bad, but hopes that the ruler will not pay much attention to those around him. Leonard looks back at the girl and asks her to let him know if she gets worse. Elin assures that he will certainly do so, and the young people move on. In the building, the commander reports that the last knight has arrived and the meeting can begin. The man says that lately the emperor has been worried about the health of the knights. It was ordered to balance the amount of training and improve nutrition, and any knight with any ailments can go to the royal hospital. Everyone around is quietly discussing the order, a joyful event, but for some reason alarming. Elin is perplexed why a whole meeting had to be called because of such a topic. Leonard says that from today and the next 3 days, he and the girl will accompany the emperor. Suddenly, Elin hears the conversation and, hiding behind a flower, decides to eavesdrop. 2 maids discuss that the overlord is looking for the girl he spent the night with during the festival. The general approaches, notes that the knight has turned very pale, and strongly recommends inviting a doctor. Elin replies that everything is in perfect order, but they need to hurry, otherwise they will be late. The man thoughtfully looks after the girl and notices that she has changed a lot in recent weeks. Rumors spread quickly in the palace. Previously, the emperor's secret actions would not have allowed such a story to leak out. The ruler is thoughtfully studying official documents when knights enter the office. The man hands Leonard the papers and displeasedly remarks that the general is not performing his duties well. The maid comes in with a cart of food and says it's time for the meal. Elin purses her lips in horror and hopes that the smell won't make her sick right now. If she disgraced herself while eating the emperor, that would be the end of everything. The girl tries to somehow switch her attention and squeezes her hand behind her back with all her might. Suddenly, the emperor is served a beautiful dessert, and the girl looks at him with all her eyes. Elin is drooling, desperate to eat this citrusy dessert that doesn't make her sick. Banishing the visions from her head, the girl tries to hold on to the thread of reason, because this is the emperor's food. The knight thinks that on his way home, he will stop by the market and buy himself wonderful tangerines. The emperor turns to the girl, irritated by his gaze, and asks what's the matter. Suddenly, the girl loses all her strength and falls, clutching her master with her hands. The emperor is furious. No one should touch his majesty without permission. Leonard rushes to the girl's defense, assures that she did not fall intentionally, and asks to recall the Shadow Knights. Elin is surprised that the general is protecting her at such a dangerous moment. He must be a really good person. The girl decides that she, too, should not be inactive and needs to somehow justify herself. Suddenly, the knight's stomach begins to growl loudly, and she is ready to fall through the ground out of shame. The emperor is silent for a minute and then orders the Shadow Knights to leave. Elin steps aside from the ruler and, bowing obediently, admits that she is mortally guilty. Suddenly, the girl hears a question from the ruler, who is interested in whether the general is starving his charges. The girl realizes in amazement that the responsibility for the fact that she cannot eat normally is being shifted to Leonard. Elin begins to make excuses, declaring that everything is not like that at all. The emperor, without listening to the knight, orders the general to leave the office for a while. The man is at a loss. He fears that he will not be able to protect his knight from the wrath of his master. Leonard tries to object and says that he has no right to leave the emperor. Kaya looks at the man with cold rage and quietly says that he won't repeat it twice. The general leaves, and the emperor tells Ilan that now she, without worrying about her service, can speak directly. The girl stands her ground and says that all responsibility for the incident lies solely with her. Kayat asks with a grin what Ilan did wrong that her stomach makes such sounds. Unable to think of anything better, the knight says that her body was too heavy and she was trying to eat less to lose weight. The ruler is perplexed. The knight, who is entrusted with guarding the emperor, watches his weight for the sake of beauty. The girl embarrassedly says that this is exactly how it is and asks for forgiveness. Kaya points to the chair opposite him and orders the girl to sit down. The girl decides that she misheard, and the emperor irritably says that all his knights need to repeat everything twice. Elin looks at the ruler sitting opposite her and realizes that the tension makes her stomach twist even more. Kaya snaps his fingers and orders the maids to bring more food. A minute later, the table is bursting with a variety of chic dishes. The emperor looks sweetly at the girl and says that since she is hungry, she should replenish her strength. Elin understands that if she doesn't eat anything, it will arouse suspicion, but the mere sight of food makes her terribly sick. Seeing the girl's embarrassment, the ruler orders her to eat. It is unthinkable for his knights to faint from hunger. Elin understands that she is driven into a corner. There is no way to escape, and she will have to eat. Having scooped up a spoonful of soup, the girl thinks in despair that it would have been easier to fight the legendary sea dragon. Resolutely closing his eyes, the knight puts the spoon in his mouth and swallows the soup. Barely holding food in his stomach, Elin says that he will definitely make sure that this does not happen again. The Lord wonders whether he can trust the girl in this matter. The emperor replies that the knight should not think about getting up from the table until she has eaten everything. Kaya orders the maids to tell Leonard to return to the office. The general bends his knee, says that he was not attentive enough, and asks for forgiveness for the mistake he made. Leonard assures that Ilan is not to blame for anything, but the whole point is the inexperience of the man himself. The girl is so surprised by the general's defense that she temporarily forgets about her nausea. The man admits that he noticed the girl's discomfort in the morning, but being satisfied with her words, he did not call a doctor. The general explains that Ilan is the youngest among the knights and is afraid to miss work shifts. Suddenly, Leonard turns to the girl and asks to excuse him. Elin doesn't know what to say. The emperor is furious because this morning he gave orders for everyone who needs treatment. The Lord tells the girl that she can be examined by a doctor at any time, but Elin assures that she is not sick at all. Kayat says that it's not a girl's place to judge health problems and orders them to call a doctor. Lying on the couch and waiting for the doctor, the girl is sure that her pregnancy will now reveal itself and it will all be over. Elin thinks that there is still a chance because her position does not indicate that she was the one who spent the night with the emperor. The doctor comes in and asks what happened. The girl turns in surprise. The voice seems very familiar to her. In surprise, the knight recognizes the doctor as the man who treated her in the hospital for commoners. The girl looks closely at the doctor and wonders whether it is him or his twin brother. Looking carefully at the girl, the doctor announces that he has completed the examination. The emperor wonders what happened to his knight. Elin closes his eyes in horror, realizing that now everything will be revealed. Suddenly, the girl hears the voice of a doctor who says that she has food poisoning. Turning away from the emperor, the doctor cheerfully winks at the amazed girl. Elin says with great relief that she probably ate something wrong. The doctor explains to the ruler that the girl cannot eat regular food. He will create a therapeutic diet for her. Examining the doctor's profile, the knight is convinced that this is, after all, the same doctor, but he doesn't understand how he ended up here. After some time, the nurse comes in and says that the knight's special food is ready. The nurse invites the girl to make herself comfortable, and she will help her with everything else. The woman says the food may seem tasteless and bland, but it's just what the doctor ordered. Elin happily begins to eat low-fat food, and for the first time in several days, she has an appetite. Having eaten every last spoonful, the knight sincerely thanks the emperor for his care. Kaya looks at the girl with pleasure and asks if she is full. Elin is horrified that she most likely slurped with pleasure, and the ruler watched all this. The emperor leaves, saying that the girl can return to work as soon as she gets better. He does not need nights fainting. Suddenly, images of the festival night appear in the girl's head, in which the emperor also smiled at her. Elin recalls that the man then called someone's name, but she cannot remember which one. The girl decides that now it's not worth bothering her head with such strange thoughts. The knight thinks that she really needs to rest and gain strength, so it's time to sleep. After just a couple of minutes, Aylan relaxes and falls soundly asleep. In her sleep, the girl feels someone carefully touching her face. Opening his eyes in fright, the knight throws away someone else's hand and turns sharply. To the girl's great amazement, the emperor sits on the bed and tenderly asks for forgiveness for waking her. Elin pulls the blanket over himself in horror, desperately not understanding what is happening. Suddenly, the girl realizes that this is just a dream, because the ruler would never say such a thing, and calmly turns away. The hand continues to poke at the girl's face, trying to get her attention. Elin turns, and the emperor leans towards her face, clearly intending to kiss the girl. The knight covers his eyes with his hand in despair, praying for the dream to end. Kaya leans down and gently kisses the girl's hand. Elin sits down and asks why the emperor appears in her dream and mocks her. The man touches the girl's lips with his hand and replies that he just missed her. Elin opens his eyes and realizes that it was just a strange dream. The girl sits up in bed and thinks that pregnancy is affecting her in a very strange way. The knight constantly recalls his dream and reflects that in the dream, the image of the emperor does not at all resemble the real him. Leonard observes the girl's confusion and reproachfully asks her to come to her senses. The general asks if Elon's health has improved and if she can start work. The girl assures that she is on the mend and asks for forgiveness for making her worry. The man replies that worrying about his knights is one of his direct responsibilities. The knights greet the ruler. The general reports that he has returned after executing his order. The emperor thoughtfully says that Leonard and Elon are not working together today, and asks why, in that case, they came at the same time. The general replies that they encountered each other by accident when they were returning from errands. Kaya looks at the knights suspiciously, clearly not believing the general's words, and orders him to return to his place. The maid comes in and says that the daughter of Baron Fabian's family asks for an audience. The emperor takes the papers in his hands and tells the girl to expect a call. Elin notices that the ruler answers without even raising his head. A few hours later, the Baroness wonders in despair why His Majesty is not coming. The Emperor enters and with dissatisfaction asks for what issue the girl came. The Baroness politely begins to greet the ruler, but he cuts her off and demands to get down to business. The girl embarrassedly says that she heard that the Emperor was looking for the girl with whom he spent the night during the festival. Elin thinks in horror how quickly rumors spread and why this girl came. Suddenly, the Baroness looks devotedly at Kaya and languidly asks if her master recognizes her. The Emperor, in bewilderment, asks why he should recognize the girl. Suddenly, the Baroness declares that she is exactly the stranger the Overlord is looking for. Elin cannot understand why the Baroness is lying so stupidly. The Emperor silently looks at the girl. Suddenly, Kaya turns sharply and orders the Baroness to be removed as he goes. At the very door, the ruler furiously says that he cannot stand those who lie to him. The knight and the Emperor are walking along the corridor, and suddenly, a girl calls out to him. After thinking a little, Elin boldly asks what the ruler will do if a girl appears expecting a child from him. The Emperor looks thoughtfully at the knight and says that this simply cannot happen. The man angrily says that if this happens, it will probably be another lie, and he will have to pay for it in full. Elin presses his hand to his stomach in despair and thinks that he needs to hide his situation with all his might. A little later, Leonard approaches the knight and notices that the girl looks very bad. Elin assures that everything is fine. There were just too many strange visitors today. The girl says that a guest came whom she was not expecting and tells the general about the strange visit. The maids, hearing the conversation, begin to discuss that the Baroness's family is ruined and wonder how she could have learned about the news. Suddenly, a woman's voice is heard greeting Leonard. The man freezes in bewilderment. Alice Crescent appears in front of the young people and notices that she and her brother have not seen each other for a long time. The man is puzzled and clearly not happy to meet him, but politely greets his sister. The girl turns to Aylan and says that she has long wanted to meet her. The knight is confused and does not understand why such a high person is interested in her person. Leonard notices that his sister clearly did not come here for the sake of meeting someone and advises the girl to go on her way. Alice happily reports that she came to see the Emperor, and if her brother insists, then she will rush to the meeting. Leonard follows his sister and says that today, a girl from a bankrupt family came, and this could not have happened without someone's help. Alice stops, and the general confidently says that the girl was just bait. The sister turns and with an innocent look replies that she doesn't know what she's talking about, and it's really time for her to go. Elin asks the general in bewilderment why he thinks the Baroness is bait. Leonard admits that Alice just wanted to test the Emperor's reaction to such rumors and used an innocent person to do this. Elin asks in horror whether the general's sister could do such an act. Leonard replies that his sister is like a viper and advises the knight to avoid encountering her if possible. Elin reflects that the Emperor is at the age when he already needs to choose an empress. The days of bloodshed are over, but checking is still necessary, which means throwing bait is the most convenient way. The girl does not understand what kind of soul one must have in order to send a person to the Emperor, knowing that he could die. For several nights in a row, Elin has had the same strange dream involving the ruler. The Emperor comes to the girl again, lies down on her bed, and entertains her with conversations. Elin wants to ask why His Majesty comes to her in a dream, but the man interrupts the girl and asks her to simply call him Kyle. The man hugs the girl, and she thinks with shame that in her dream what she really wants is happening to her. In the morning, the knight serves the Emperor. Her body is gradually recovering, but her soul is restless. Elin is worried about the court doctor, and Alice began to visit the palace more and more often. Because of her strange dreams, the girl begins to perceive the Emperor equally in his dreams and in reality. Elin looks out the window and dreams that her soul will become as clear as the weather outside the window. The sun through the glass warms the girl. She feels as if under a blanket, warm and safe, and her eyes gradually close. The girl falls asleep and instantly finds herself sitting on the Emperor's lap. Elin clearly understands that this is a dream, but suddenly it occurs to her that if she is sleeping now, then who is guarding the Emperor? Realizing that she is most likely sleeping right under the nose of the ruler, the girl tries with all her might to force herself to wake up. Elin opens his eyes and sees the sovereign's office, but does not see the Emperor himself. Suddenly the knight feels some strange movement in her hair, as if someone sighed next to her. The girl turns around in horror and sees that she is actually sitting on Keiya's lap. The knight immediately kneels and asks for forgiveness in fear. Elin hopes that this is still a dream and wonders what will happen if she just calls the overlord Kyle. The girl looks into the impenetrable face of the Emperor and cannot understand what he is thinking about. Suddenly, Elin notices that Alice Crescent is standing frozen in the doorway of the office. The girl looks at the knight and the Emperor in bewilderment for some time, and then, without saying a word, runs away. Elin watches the girl leave in complete amazement, not knowing if she needs to say something. The knight fearfully thinks about how long Alice was in the office and what she managed to see. Keiya angrily slams his hand on the table and says that all this annoys him. The Lord orders Elin to get up from her knees. The girl unquestioningly follows the order. The Emperor says that the knight's escort work is finished and she can return to her original post. Elin doesn't understand why the man behaves as if he has put her under his care until she gets better. The girl understands that this is for the best, but for some reason in the depths of her heart, she feels as if she is missing something. Then it occurs to Elin that all the anxieties and strange sensations are connected specifically with pregnancy. The knight's position problem has not yet been resolved, so she cannot relax and let her guard down. Elin sighs and wonders how Kyle would react to the news about the baby. The vase falls to the floor with a loud sound and breaks into many pieces. Alice, in a rage, begins to trample the flowers with her feet, unable to think of another way to throw out the accumulated anger. The next day, Elin goes outside and settles down to eat. Due to problems with smell perception, she cannot eat normally with everyone. In addition, everyone began to worry about her nutrition, but the more the girl worries, the more difficult it is for her to eat. To mark her departure from the Emperor, Elin finally bought herself the much-coveted tangerine. Passing by, General Leonard sees a knight and worries with concern why the girl is sitting alone. The commander quietly approaches and takes Elin by the shoulder, but the girl gets very scared and drops the peeled tangerine. Noticing that the mandarin has fallen to the ground, Elin's eyes begin to fill with tears. Leonard did not expect such a strange reaction and is noticeably embarrassed. Other knights immediately approach and look in amazement at the crying girl. The general gets scared and calls on the girl to honestly answer where it hurts. Elin doesn't understand how she can explain to the general the true reason for her tears. The doctor warned that due to hormonal changes, it would be more difficult to control his emotions. The girl understands that she needs to somehow pull herself together and convince Leonard that everything is okay. Suddenly, the man gently wipes the girl's tears and softly says that she can tell him everything. The colleagues standing nearby were shocked. The general had never shown such gentleness before. Suddenly, Elin admits that Leonard scared her and the tangerine fell into the mud. Leonard expected anything, but the fact that you could cry like that because of some tangerine. The general apologizes for being inattentive. He had no idea that the tangerine was so important to the girl. The man says that he will never atone for his guilt before Elin. But then the general confidently says that he will take responsibility for the incident. Elin becomes funny. I wonder how the general will take responsibility for the tangerine. Leonard turns to the male knights and says that they should leave. The man tells the girl that he has no idea what happened to her, but she can always turn to him. As he leaves, Leonard adds that even if everything is bad, Elin can always rely on him. The general leaves, and the girl realizes in confusion that she didn't even expect that she would be so unable to control her emotions. The next day, Elin approaches the doors of the building and looks in surprise at the huge baskets full of tangerines. The boss reports that this is a gift from General Leonard especially for the girl. The man says that the remaining baskets have not yet been delivered, but orders have been received to pick them up immediately if the knight needs them. Touched by the concern, Elin realizes that she would never be able to eat so much on her own and calls her friends for help. After a couple of hours of continuous eating, young people realize that just a little more and they will burst. Walking down the stairs, Alana wonders if she should go to the gym and lightly swing her sword. The doctor warned that in the early stages of pregnancy, you need to be careful, but the girl already reduced her training to a minimum. Elin thinks that if she doesn't warm up, her body will become stiff. The girl was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the steps behind her. The dark figure pushes with force, and the girl begins to fall down the stairs. In horror, Elin recalls that the doctor warned about the danger of various injuries to the child. The girl falls at the foot of the stairs and clutches her stomach, bending over in pain. The girl wants to get up and go to the doctor, but she understands that she cannot move. Elin cannot breathe from the pain in his stomach and tries to at least call someone for help. Losing consciousness from shock and pain, the girl sees some vague silhouette running to her aid. It seems to her that it is Kaya. An alarmed General Leonard appears before the knight's eyes. It was he who ran to the rescue. The man tries to examine the girl. She says that her stomach hurts and asks to take her to the court doctor. Leonard says that it will take a long time to find a doctor. It will be much faster to go to the knight's infirmary. Elin categorically refuses and says that she only needs a doctor. Deciding not to argue, the general grabs the girl in his arms and carries her to the palace. Elin is in pain and fearfully waits for the doctor, awaiting his verdict. Suddenly, the door swings open, and the frightened Leonard drags the perplexed doctor by the scruff of the neck. Ignoring the doctor's indignation, the man drags him to the girl's bed and says that she urgently needs to be examined. The doctor says that Elin needs to relax and begins to feel her stomach. The doctor tells the general that he should wait outside and not interfere with him doing his job. The young man resists, but the doctor pushes him out and orders him to bring towels and hot water. Having closed the door, the doctor says that now the girl can speak freely and tell what happened. Having learned about what happened, the doctor is perplexed how one of the best knights could fall down the stairs. The doctor begins to carefully listen to the stomach. The girl freezes with fear. Having completed the examination, the doctor reports that everything is fine with the child, but his stomach hurts from severe fright. The man takes out the medicine and says that with its help, all bruises will quickly go away. Suddenly the door creaks and Leonard asks in shock what they just talked about. The doctor shields the girl and says that he asked the general to bring towels and water. Leonard, stunned, asks if what he just heard is true. The doctor asks what the man is asking about in order to understand what exactly he managed to hear. The general, confused, says that he means the child. The doctor understands that it is pointless to deny. The man sits next to Ilan and gently asks why she hid everything, but the girl remains silent. When asked about the child's father, the knight replies that she has no reason to discuss this with the general. Leonard asks if the girl is going to give birth and raise a child alone. Ilan nods in the affirmative. The girl feverishly realizes that if she sells the house, she will have some money and will be able to leave the palace. Ilan is worried that the general may cause publicity and is going to ask him to remain silent about everything. Suddenly, Leonard takes Ilan's hand and decisively says that he can become the father of the child. The girl is shocked. She decides that she misheard or simply misunderstood the man. With a laugh, the girl says that she is glad that the general decided to have children, but he replies that he wants to be the father of her child. The girl is very embarrassed and asks if Leonard really likes her. The man admits that he fell in love with Ilan the very moment he saw her. The knight replies that now she has no opportunity to respond to the general's feelings. Leonard says that he is in no hurry and asks permission to just be near the girl. Suddenly, the general remembers that he was supposed to bring towels and quickly leaves. Ilan, in amazement, asks the doctor if she is dreaming now, but the doctor assures the girl that this is not a dream. The girl is in thought. She cannot understand whether the general's words were sincere. In the hallway, Leonard, in an impotent rage, punches the wall with all his might. The doctor, watching from around the corner, thinks with regret that, as expected, all the rage goes to the walls. The man understands that the general has something to be angry about. If the father of a child leaves a woman, then he is clearly neglecting her. The doctor grinningly thinks that he knows a similar man, whom he jokingly calls the owner of his collar. Noticing a shadow behind the glass, the man covers it with his back and notices that she came to overhear the story and report it to the owner. The doctor understands that he may be punished for not properly protecting his target, but nevertheless, he really likes it when something interesting happens. The doctor wonders with interest what the trapped girl knight will do now. Ilan heads towards the house and thinks that the general can be counted on. He is not one to talk. The girl told Leonard that she would be fine, but he ordered her to go home and rest for a few days. A girl walks past the market and suddenly smells an incredible smell. Running up to the merchant, the knight sees fresh bread, the smell of which evokes an incredible appetite. Ilan thinks that due to toxicosis, he will hardly be able to eat anything, despite the delicious smell. Unable to cope with her desires, the girl decides to try at least a piece. Suddenly, Ilan starts crying because the bread tastes so amazing. With tears, the knight asks the saleswoman to bring her 10 buns. The girl chews bread and realizes with delight that the period of terrible toxicosis is finally over. Meanwhile, the emperor sits in his office and begins to cough incessantly. Suddenly, a shadow knight appears behind the emperor and anxiously asks about the cause of the cough, whether it is poison or a curse. The lord says that this has nothing to do with poison or a curse and orders a doctor to be brought. After a second, the doctor wonders why lately he has been dragged so abruptly every time. Rising from the floor, the doctor asks how he can help his master. Kaya says that the smell of food makes him feel nauseous, and that thinking about food makes him want to vomit, and asks the doctor what these symptoms are like. The doctor says with a smile that these symptoms are definitely not due to poison or curse. After asking a couple of clarifying questions, the doctor confidently voices the diagnosis. After a moment of silence, the emperor thoughtfully reports that everything has now fallen into place. Ilan happily falls on the bed and thinks that today, full of delicious food, was simply wonderful. The girl did not even suspect that the ability to eat normally would be so valuable, and with these thoughts, she falls asleep. In a dream, the emperor comes to Ilan again and says with a smile that they have not seen each other for a long time. Suddenly, the girl runs her hand over the man's cheek and notices that he has lost a lot of weight. Kaya sits up abruptly and says that the girl thought everything was fine with him. To change the subject, the emperor says that the girl has gained a little weight and it suits her very well. The ruler puts the girl's head on her knees and asks if she suddenly receives a marriage proposal. Will she accept it? Elin thoughtfully recalls the story with General Leonard and sighs heavily. Finally, the knight admits that she would most likely reject this offer. The man hugs the girl to him and asks her not to leave today and stay with him. Waking up, Ilan sits up abruptly. These dreams have begun to exhaust the girl too much, and she decides to please herself with something. Running up to the market, the girl realizes with tears in her eyes that the chicken kebab shop has not yet opened. Arriving at the palace, Ilan comes to the doctor and complains that he cannot control his desires at all. The doctor replies that such problems are completely normal and the girl needs to eat what she wants. The knight says that because of her work it is impossible, but Leonard suddenly appears and says that he will help. Elin understands that the general's offer will help her a lot, but she still feels awkward. The doctor says that he has business outside the palace, and he will also be happy to help the girl. The knight begins to shake the doctor's hand forcefully and thanks him enthusiastically. After some time, the doctor brings Elin chicken kebab, but the girl, embarrassed, says that she wants fruit. The doctor notes with a grin that pregnant women often change their taste preferences. The doctor happily eats the kebab himself and says that he will soon bring the girl fruit. After a while, the doctor brings Elin a whole box of fruits and says that thanks to his connections, he was able to get the best ones. After the toxicosis passed, the knight began to look around and noticed that for a long time, someone had been watching her every step. Elin thinks that the doctor could have organized the surveillance, but Lady Alice is also behaving quite strangely. It is said that Alice abused girls who approached the emperor, and apparently she saw Elin on Kaya's lap. The knight understands that one way or another, she needs to figure it all out, and only Leonard can help with this. Elin comes to the building. One of the knights tells her that the general was sent to the northern region. The knight asks what is the reason for Leonard's sudden business trip, but no one knows anything. The girl knows that barbarians often attack in that place. Only in words it is a business trip, but in reality it is a punishment. Elin turns around and faces the doctor, who greets her politely. The girl decides to ask the doctor if he happens to know about the general's business trip. The doctor falls silent, but from his look the knight understands that he knows something. The doctor sharply says that he knows nothing and hurriedly leaves. The girl realizes that she no longer has a choice or protection and understands that the time has come to escape from the palace. For some reason, it seems to Elin that she will no longer see her wonderful dreams about the emperor, and her soul is sad. The commander returns the resignation letter to the girl and says that if the reason is related to health, then an examination of at least 3 royal doctors is necessary. If the royal doctors examine Elin, then everything will be revealed, and then the girl will die either at the hands of the emperor or Lady Alice. Soon the girl's body will noticeably change, and since her application was not accepted, all that remains is to run. Elin has been wandering along the road for a long time and understands that he needs to stop and rest. The girl climbs a tree where she will not be immediately noticed, and she will be the first to see people. Suddenly, sounds are heard below, and several people appear under the tree, clearly looking for traces. Elin sees that there are shadow knights below, and they have clearly come in search of a girl. But after a little time, the knights go in the other direction, and the calmed Elin falls asleep. Kaya appears next to the girl and asks why she ran away from him. Elin says that she is unwell, and the emperor promises to call the best doctors if only the girl will return. The girl thoughtfully reflects that Kyle from the dreams is very affectionate and kind. But then Elin remembers furious words that the girl who deceived him will have to pay in full. A real emperor is merciless. There is no mercy for him, so the image from the dream should not deceive the girl. Kyle grabs the girl by the shoulder and asks her to tell her what illness is tormenting her. Suddenly, the man puts his hand on Elin's stomach and asks if this is the same disease. Kyle says there's nothing he doesn't know, so the girl shouldn't lie to him. Looking into Elin's eyes, the ruler confidently says that she is carrying his child. Kyle says that he will forgive everything if the girl returns to the palace and their child becomes the heir to the title. Elin asks how long the emperor has known everything. The man replies that he was in the know from the very beginning. The shocked girl asks if all these dreams were reality. Kyle confirms and says that this does not change anything. The emperor says that the girl is carrying his child, which means she will be with him in any case. After a short silence and thought, Ilan decisively declares that he refuses his offer. The girl jumps from the tree and says that, like the man, she hates people who lie to her. With furiously flashing eyes, the emperor tells himself that in this case, he will have to return the girl by force. Ilan wakes up abruptly and realizes that it is already morning. The girl jumps from the tree and wants to check the place where she left the horse, when suddenly a voice is heard from behind. A shadow knight stands behind Ilan and reports that the emperor is calling the girl. The knight reports that if the girl runs away, it will be considered a betrayal of the empire. Ilan does not intend to give up so easily and follow the wishes of the emperor. She sharply snatches the dagger from her sleeve and quickly turns around. Almost without looking where she is hitting, the girl plunges the dagger right under the hood. The girl runs with all her might and thinks that yesterday, the Shadow Knights meant the Emperor was able to find her, appearing in a dream. Ilan understands that if the Emperor knew everything from the very beginning, he only observed how hard it was for the girl. In the dream, Kaya was affectionate, offered to become his empress, but in reality he did absolutely nothing when she was suffering. The girl can hardly hold back her tears, not understanding why the ruler treated her so cruelly. Ilan finds a small hole in which she was able to hide from the Shadow Knights. The girl understands that if she falls asleep, Kaye will appear again, so it's better for her not to sleep. Ilan realizes that it is impossible to live without sleep. Apparently, the Emperor is using magic or a curse to penetrate her dreams. The knight remembers that there is a place where people versed in magic live. This is the city of Eileen. Ilan decides to go to this city because it is in this place that the solution should be found. The girl thoughtfully examines her hair and comes to the conclusion that the hair color is too noticeable. A couple of hours later, Ilan happily examines the results of his disguise. The girl runs on with enthusiasm, hoping that now she will be less noticeable. A few days later, Ilan finally reached the city of the sages of Eileen. The girl runs through the streets, thinking that she needs to find the sage as quickly as possible. The sage says that the magic of the past was used on the girl, which has the ability to contact a loved one through a dream. Ilan anxiously asks if there is any way to break the spell. The man honestly admits that there have been few researchers in this type of magic, so at the moment there is no way to get rid of this magic. The sage says that the effect of this magic manifests itself if one is near the person bound by the spell. Ilan understands that the power of sleep can only be weakened by moving away from the Emperor. The girl takes a deep breath and thanks the sage for the clarifications and advice. Leaving the shop, the knight realizes that the only way out for her is to run. Ilan puts his hand on his already noticeably protruding stomach and thinks that it will be difficult to always be on the road. The girl decides that she needs to go to a place where there are fewer people and live there quieter than water below the grass. The Shadow Knight reports that unfortunately, they missed the fugitive. The Emperor angrily orders a search order to be issued and all borders to be closed. Kayla says to remember to include a clause about not harming her in any way. The Emperor reasons that Ilan did not have close people in the palace. In the core, she was considered only a nice junior knight. If Kaya tries to threaten the lives of the knights, the girl is unlikely to lift a finger for them. She needs to be more careful. On the same day, leaflets were posted throughout the empire accusing the knight of rebellion against the emperor. Leonard stands on a high fortress wall. His thoughts, like every day, are dedicated to the knight Ilan. Suddenly, one of his subordinates approaches the general and says that a wanted list has arrived from the capital. The guy shows a flyer with Ilan's picture and says that this time an imperial knight is wanted. Leonard, horrified, snatches the flyer, which specifically states that the girl must be delivered unharmed. The general desperately does not understand what could happen to the girl if she was put on the wanted list. Suddenly, the man remembers Ilan's reaction to his question about the child's father. Leonard thinks that if the blood of the emperor flows in the child, then the doctor assigned to the girl, and the search, and his business trip, everything makes sense. The man is sure that if Ilan had loved the emperor, she would not have run away from him, which means she did not want to take the place of the empress at all. The emperor is a cruel man who kills even those who confess their love to him. Does he intend to do the same with Ilan? The man reflects that the reason for the girl's escape is simple and understandable. She was driven by fear and horror. Even when Leonard lost his parents, he knew that the emperor did it. but he still bowed to him because he could not do anything. The man held on, thinking that someday he would be able to take revenge, and now he could again lose the person dear to him. Clutching a leaflet in his hands, the general decides that he urgently needs to return to the capital. You need to be close to the emperor in order to receive information about the knight Ilan in time. Suddenly, Leonard is called out by a knight from the corps, hurrying towards him. The young man reports to the general that an order has arrived from the emperor in which he orders the commander to return. The other knights discuss that the general's urgent call may be due to the fact that he served in the same post with Ilan. Leonard suspects that the emperor is up to something, but he doesn't care at all because this is his only chance. A few months later, the girl, now called Lan, settled in one of the distant villages of the empire. A local resident notes that Lan is very hardworking, but still she should not forget about her position. At first, everyone shunned the girl, but when they found out that the child's father had abandoned her, they began to sympathize with her very much. The woman asks if Lan is involved in prenatal education for the child. The resident explains that to do this, you need to speak kindly to the child and say words of love as often as possible. The woman notices that Lanmar's speech is somewhat reminiscent of a knight's. There is a sense of firmness in her. The neighbor says with a smile that in any case, talking with the child is very useful. Entering the house, Lan sits down, puts her hands on her stomach, and thinks that for the first time in her life, she will have a family. The girl gently strokes her belly and says that she loves her baby very much. Lan says that when the child is born, they will definitely live happily, despite the fact that the father will not be around. The knight understands that the child will only be better off without a tyrant father. It doesn't matter if a girl is born a boy or a girl. They will still be very happy. Time passed as usual. The locals were very helpful, and the girl coped with all the difficulties. And finally, the long-awaited day of birth arrived. Lan, experiencing incredible pain, could hardly hold back her tears. The girl thought that instead of her neighbor's hand, she would gladly grab Kaya's hair. Suddenly, the midwife freezes in amazement. Now she understands why the girl had such a big belly. The woman turns, and Lan sees 2 children in her arms, a boy and a girl. The midwife hands the children to the amazed girl and says that she has 2 completely healthy babies. The mother hugs her children and experiences incredible joy. Now she has not 1, but 2 happinesses. The girl calls the charming girl with black hair Rian. The boy, with hair exactly like his mother's, is named Enril. Lan looks at his children with love and says that now they will live happily. Every day, the mother notices how much Enril's eyes change. The shining golden color is strikingly reminiscent of the eyes of his tyrant father. At first, the girl was afraid that if the children looked like the emperor, she would not be able to love them. Enril is calmer than his sister, and Rian is full of energy, and even just looking at her is a lot of fun. Lan watches the children and thinks that, first of all, they are her children, and not the children of the emperor. The girl yawns desperately, realizing that raising 2 children alone is not at all easy. Looking at the kids, Lan thanks God that they are eating well and growing rapidly. The girl is anxiously looking for her children, and someone's hand is reaching out to her from behind. Kaya grabs Lan by the hands and says that he has finally found her, no matter how hard the girl tries to escape from him. Lan begins to scream in horror and tries with all his might to escape, but the emperor is too strong. The man leans towards the girl's ear and, his eyes sparkling furiously, says that he will take good care of the children. Lan sits up abruptly in bed and is relieved to realize that it was just a nightmare. The girl runs up to the crib and calms down, seeing that the children are sleeping peacefully. Lan cries exhaustedly, but promises the children that he will definitely protect them. The Shadow Knights enter the house and don't understand how the girl does it, but they always end up one step behind. During the search, one of the knights finds a toy. His commander notices that this indicates that the girl now has a child. The Shadow says that the fugitive used to be able to hide, but having a child in her arms makes her vulnerable. The commander of the Shadow Knights says he can no longer disappoint his master. Lan finishes preparing breakfast and calls the children to the table. 5-year-old twins Rian and Enril run cheerfully into the kitchen. The girl, as always, runs ahead. The girl finishes setting the table and thinks that it is easier to run away with older children. but they have not been able to settle in a certain place for a long time. Lan looks at the children and understands that she can't live like this anymore. And isn't it time for the Emperor to forget about her? Suddenly, there is a knock on the door, and a vague silhouette is visible behind the glass. The girl quietly approaches the door. The ear, wondering if anyone is home, is well known to her. Lan decides to pretend that no one is home and not open the door. Suddenly, Ryan, shouting that Uncle Albert has arrived, runs to the door. The girl opens the door, and Albert, one of the group of strangers who came to the village, is really standing on the threshold. The residents thought that the aristocrats who came and at first shunned them, but thanks to Albert's charm, he was quickly accepted in the village. The girl thinks that many people have come to trust the man over time, but not her. Having let Albert in, the mother turns to her daughter and tells her to return to the table and finish breakfast. Lan prepares a basket for herbs, but the man snatches it from his hands and politely asks to be allowed to carry the burden. The man says that apparently the girl is going to buy herbs and he will accompany her. Lan doesn't need Albert's company, so when the children want to go with them, she happily allows it. Local residents have long been fascinated by the young woman with children, and everyone stops to say hello to her. One of the women says that everything on the mountain is upside down because of a wild boar that has not yet been caught, and advises the girl to be careful. Young people pass by a group of local men, and Lynn slows down a little to listen to what they are saying. The men thoughtfully discuss what the Emperor might be missing if he goes out of his way to find one person. Lan realizes with despair that Kailat still hasn't let her go and is still looking for her. Noticing Albert's strange look, the girl realizes that he too was alarmed by the conversation of the local residents. Lan thinks that the man's gaze does not resemble the usual hostility towards the locals, but rather shows hostility towards the entire empire. The girl herself doesn't understand why, but Albert's company is unpleasant to her. Wandering through the forest and collecting herbs, the young people suddenly hear a loud roar. In horror, they watch as a huge wild boar emerges from the forest, which is not at all friendly. Lan notices that the boar is wounded, probably escaped from the hunters, and that is why he is so excited. Turning to the children, the mother orders them to stand still and not move. Lan thinks that she can easily deal with the boar, but then she will reveal her knightly skills. Suddenly, Albert takes out a sword from behind his back and says that he will deal with the boar. The girl should not worry too much. The man rushes at the beast, but it deftly dodges and rushes straight at the girl at full speed. Lan understands that even if Albert follows the animal, he still won't make it in time. The girl decides that she has no choice, takes out a hidden weapon, and remembers all her skills. For one of the Imperial Knights, dealing with a wild beast is like cutting off a piece of cake. Having waited for the boar to run closer, Lan makes a jump, and with one short and powerful blow drives the blade into the animal's neck up to the hilt. After making sure that the beast is dead, the girl approaches the stunned Albert and hands him a bloody blade. The mother rushes to the children to personally make sure that they are completely fine and not too scared. Suddenly, hunters come out of the bushes and notice a dead boar and a man with a bloody weapon in his hands. The hunters ask how Albert managed to put down the boar alone, but the man points at Lan and says that she did it. The girl hugs the children close to her and deliberately loudly tells them not to be afraid, because Uncle Albert has dealt with the beast. Enril quietly tells his mother that it is not good to lie, because it was she who defeated the beast. And then he understands that his mother said this so that they would not be persecuted by the evil emperor. Lan remembers with sadness that when the children grew up a little, she told them the truth, embellishing the reality a little. Albert comes up and speaks that the hunters had already left, but promised to share the meat as soon as they cut up the boar. A little later, Lan examines the gift and realizes that he won't have to worry about meat and skins anytime soon. The girl examines the huge fang and thinks that it can fetch enough money. Thinking that it is unlikely that anyone in the village can sell a fang, the mother calls the children into the kitchen. Lan tells the children that tomorrow he will go to the city to sell boar tusk, and thinks that he will collect information along the way. By the next lunch, the girl reached the city. She thinks that she needs to do everything as quickly as possible and return home. Lan thinks that he needs to buy something, and in order to collect information, he needs to get to the inn. The girl resolutely heads to one of the taverns, thinking that she needs to rest. Lan realizes that the night of travel has noticeably weakened her. As she thought, Her body is gradually losing its shape. The girl warms up with a hot drink and gradually her eyes begin to close. Suddenly, the girl hears the voice of the emperor, who says that they have not seen each other for a long time. Lan quickly leaves, but Kaya asks if the girl won't even look at him. With a smile, the ruler says that he was looking for a girl for a very long time, and she ended up in such a miserable village. Lan realizes in horror that all this is not a dream, and if Kyle appears again after so many years, it means he is somewhere nearby. The gentleman asks how long the girl will stay away from him, but she replies that she is just going about her business. Lan is furious and says that he will run away from this village too. It's time for the emperor to stop looking for her. The girl admits that everything happened on her whim on the night of the festival, but she did not want what happened next. Kyle approaches the girl and asks if Lan has never had any sympathy for him. The girl furiously replies that there was no sympathy, and there could not be. The man says that even if Lan hates him, she will still have to return to the palace with him. Suddenly, the emperor touches the girl's stomach and asks what happened to the child. Lan pushes the man's hand away and says that the child was never meant to be born. The Lord says that this is an unfortunate fact, but a new one can be conceived. The man continues to convince the girl that she needs to leave this village and return to him. Lan thinks that compared to last time, Kai is surprisingly calm. The girl abruptly snaps out of her sleep and thinks that she needs to return home, but she is afraid of surveillance. Lan realizes that the journey will take longer than she planned, but she needs to lead her pursuers away. Meanwhile, the children are discussing that their mother is very late, although she promised to return quickly. Enril asks her sister to turn on the light, but Rian reminds her that her mother asked not to turn on the light when she is not there. Suddenly, the children hear a strange sound coming from outside the house. Brother and sister hear a voice and recognize Uncle Albert. The children come to the door, but Mother did not allow even people she knew to open the door in her absence. Albert says from behind the door that he needs to leave the village, and if anyone asks about him, the children should answer that they know nothing. After a while, making sure that it is quiet outside the door, Rian decides to open the door. The guys notice that Uncle had a good fight with someone because the yard is a complete mess. Suddenly, a shadow knight appears in front of the children and terrifies the brother and sister. The knight asks if the guys know anything about the man who was just here. The knight standing behind the shadow says that they are ordered to capture everyone with whom the rebels are associated, no matter what age they are. General Leonard says that the rebels are clearly connected to these children, so it is necessary to take them with them. The shadow drags the children, and the general examines them carefully and realizes that the girl's eyes and the boy's hair remind him of someone very much. Leonard turns around and says that first he needs to report to His Majesty. Stepping forward, the general understands that the children of the Emperor and Ilan have been found, judging by their appearance. Their mother loves them very much and cares for them. The Shadow Knight kneels before the Emperor and says that they have discovered children who are associated with the rebels. Kaya irritably says that he ordered all suspicious children to be eliminated immediately. The Lord notices the children standing at the entrance and orders them to be brought closer. The man carefully examines the children and wonders how old they are. Kaya remembers that 5 years have passed since Ilan escaped. Suddenly, the Emperor says that the children smell strange and orders them to be washed thoroughly. Enril hides behind his sister in fear, and Rian shamelessly asks if the man is going to eat them. The Shadow Knight leans over to the children and informs them that His Majesty does not eat human flesh. Kalite leans over to the children and says soulfully that they are very similar to their mother. The girl is surprised that they know each other. The Lord asks the children who their father is, but the guys answer that they don't know. The man realizes that Ilan despises him so much that she didn't even tell the children about him. Suddenly, the Emperor tells the children that perhaps he is their father. But Ryan confidently declares that they do not look a bit like a demon. The Emperor invites the children to take a closer look. They are very similar to him, and it turns out that they are the children of a demon. The man, deciding to change the subject, assumes that the children are hungry and offers to feed them. Enril tries to snatch the fork from her sister's hands, assuring her that she might be poisoned, but the girl is so hungry that she does not listen to her brother. Ryan, making sure that the food is very tasty, puts a fork in his brother's mouth and he realizes with amazement that his sister was right. Kaya looks at the children with tenderness. He never imagined that fatherly feelings could awaken in him. Noticing that the children were so full that they fell asleep on the floor, the emperor orders everyone to leave. The man comes closer and carefully examines the sleeping children. 2 days later, Lan runs up to the house, is horrified to notice the open door and calls for the children. The girl hears a rustling behind her and, drawing her sword, turns around sharply. Lin recognizes the general, but attacks him in rage and asks where her children are. Upon learning that the brother and sister are in the hands of the emperor, the mother becomes furious. Leonard says he will explain everything to the girl later, but for now she needs to run away. The man says that there are shadow knights everywhere, and at the slightest opportunity they will catch her. Leonard insists that this is not a situation where Elan can trust him, but he still insists on listening to him. Having hit the general one last time, the girl quickly runs away. The girl runs past the bushes, from which a guy suddenly crawls out and calls out to her. Lan recognizes the guy. Byrne was the one who helped Albert. The girl follows the guy and notices that he is quite skillful in hiding from his pursuers. Lan thinks that because of suspicions, Byrne previously kept his distance from her, but now he helps her. Looking through the telescope, the man notices that they are in trouble because there is a checkpoint ahead. Albert looks at the military and thinks about why the emperor called the knights from a special unit. The man remembers a recent conversation between local residents and realizes that they are not only looking for rebels. Albert remembers Elan and everything that recently happened and comes to the conclusion that if a girl with such skills is hiding in a simple village, then this is not without reason. Byrne appears and says that he met Lan while scouting in the forest and brought her here. The girl asks if they were able to find her children, but the man just waves his head negatively. Albert says that they did everything possible, but because of the Shadow Knights they had to leave. Lan leaves silently. The man assures that it will be hard for one girl, and since what happened is their fault, he really wants to help. Lan replies that moving with the rebels will confuse the situation even more. Albert says that her enemy is the Emperor himself, so it will be very difficult to cope alone. Lan is sure that Albert wants to help her for a reason. He wants to find out the true identity of the girl and the children. The girl reports that she does not need help. She has enough strength to cope with her problems. Following the girl, Albert shouts that they will move out in 2 days, late at night. The man tells Byrne that they are the reason the children are in danger, so they must help. Lan thinks that Kaya came to the village with a small number of soldiers, and this is the best time for Albert and his companions. The girl understands that after giving birth and constant wandering, her body has lost its shape, and she needs to try to get it back as quickly as possible. Suddenly, General Leonard appears right in front of the girl. Seeing Elan's distrust, the man raises his hands and says that he will now throw the weapon to the ground. Lan, in a rage, asks what the general needs. He simply replies that the girl will need his help. The girl accuses that Leonard is His Majesty's most loyal knight, and all he can do is grab her and deliver her to the master. The general says that the emperor killed his parents and assures that Elan's safety is higher for him than loyalty to Kaya. Leonard admits that his feelings for the girl have not changed at all. The same applies to the proposal that he voiced 5 years ago. Lan's heart trembled, but after 5 years of constant escapes, she had forgotten how to trust people, especially men. Elan asks in alarm what's wrong with the children, but the general assures them that everything is fine with them. Leonard says everyone knows whose children are siblings, so they are well looked after. Lan decisively says that she needs to go after the children, and Leonard is not her help in this matter. Elan reflects that in 2 days, the Emperor will be busy capturing Albert, and this is the only chance to take the children. Kayla wakes up in discomfort and wonders how Rian and Enril ended up in his bed if they fell asleep on the floor. Closing his eyes, the Emperor decides to ask Elan in more detail about everything in his sleep. In the dream, Elan roughly grabs Kaya by the clothes and asks in a rage where her children are.